Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're honored to be part of the CSU Student Success Network. It's an amazing experience to be here, and we are a newer program, so we're really excited for the opportunity to share our experiences with you, what we've been able to accomplish in our year one, and what we plan to do moving forward. So welcome to our session. It's an honor just to be Asian, supporting young AANAPI professionals in the field of criminology. If you aren't aware, the phrase "it's an honor just to be Asian" is said by Sandra Oh in the rise of Stop Asian Hate. And so we really want to highlight how important it is to be culturally competent. And we understand that's why a few of y'all are joining us today. And again, we really appreciate it. We are with the Fresno State AANAPISI initiative here on here at Fresno State's campus, and we'll go a little bit more in detail about that as well.
Okay, thank you, Belle, for that opening introduction. For those of you that are just joining, we just wanted to welcome you once again for joining today's presentation. Again, our title is "It's an Honor Just to Be Asian, Supporting Young AANAPI Professionals in the Field of Criminology." So on our agenda for today, we're going to be talking about the initiative, introducing our roles and our focus, and then we're going to be jumping into initial research, our current demographics. We'll do a group activity that you all will be able to participate in, and then have a Q&A session afterwards.
So with that being said, we'd love to introduce ourselves. I know it's kind of like, oh, well, who are you? How are you involved in the initiative? So Sam and I are one of the first few staff to be hired in this. As I mentioned earlier, this is, we just completed our year one, so we're launching year two. And so we just kind of want to introduce ourselves as individuals and kind of what we're interested in as people. So my name is Gaonoucci Belle Vang, pronouns she, her, her. So you can call me Belle, address me by Belle. And I'm the AANAPISI Initiative Student Success Project Coordinator. I'll go a little bit more in depth about what I do in my role later on in this PowerPoint as well. I'm also alumna from Fresno State. As you see on my my screen here, it says alumni. And I am Hmong American and or Southeast Asian American identifying as well. So that's the particular community I come from and I'm interested in moving in the future as well. And we want to include something a little personal, but one of my hobbies is community involvement. One of my friends asked me, what do you do on your limited free time? I say I love to volunteer. I love to get involved with the community and stay rooted in the communities I come from, and would love to continue serving as I advance my careers and research as well. I'm a board member and the board secretary for Central California Asian Pacific Women, or CCAPW, a local CBO here. I also am a board member, the activities program chair for Fresno State's Asian Faculty and Staff Association, or AFSA for short. I also do work with a local CBO called A Hopeful Encounter, where we work on youth development and empowerment as well.
And hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Bautista, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm currently serving in the role of Work-Based Learning Experiences Project Coordinator. I know it's a super long title, but feel free to refer to it as WBLE, Project Coordinator. I'm also an alumna from Fresno State. I got my bachelor's degree in sociology. I see someone here with the sociology title in their name, and a minor in criminology. And I'm currently in my graduate program for student affairs and college counseling at Fresno State. I am a first generation Latina identifying student and person. And some of my hobbies is student engagement, getting involved on campus with our students, as well as, also when I was an undergrad, and also spending time with family and friends and traveling. So super happy to be here today.
So as I mentioned, I'm following through with my promise that we're going to be talking a little bit more about the initiative. So AANAPISI is very long, right? When I first heard it, I was like, I don't even know how to spell it. And when I saw the spelling, I'm like, how do I pronounce that? Like, I'm not going to say the full acronym, right? And so we want to kind of go in depth with what AANAPISI is about. So AANAPISI stands for Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander Serving Institution. It's also known as Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. So it's important to recognize that Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander are two separate phrases. So AANAPISI is that serving institution. And in order to be an AANAPISI, institutions have to have a student population of at least 10% identifying as AANAPI. And we'll go a little bit more into the statistics of that. But as of now, Fresno State has around 12% of their student population identifying that community. And despite having one of the largest, particularly Southeast Asian American student populations in the country, this is the first time Fresno State's received the AANAPISI AANAPISI program grant awarded by the U.S. Department of Education. So we were awarded for the AANAPISI grant for a 5-year term of $1.2 million for the entirety of the program. Again, this is a really big deal because it's the first time Fresno State's ever been awarded this program, and it's going to be a movement making for more representation for our AANAPISI identifying students on campus as well.
Awesome. So our next point, we're also student focused. So we serve an AANAPI identifying undergraduate students interested in criminology or FBS. And we'll kind of go into detail more about the differences. So currently at Fresno State, the criminology program has 3 different options. It's criminology law enforcement, criminology corrections, and criminology victimology. And then aside from that, FBS recently became its own major, forensic behavioral sciences. So any students that are interested in those options will also identify as Asian American and or Native American Pacific Islander. Some of the programs or highlight of our programs within the AANAPISI initiative. So Belle will be going into more detail, but she serves the peer mentor program, which is called EPIC Peer Mentors, which stands for AAPI Criminology Peer Mentor Program. We also have our peer leaders opportunity to earn a micro certificate by attending 8 different sessions that have a focus on just the experiences of students, experiences in regards to like the anti-Asian hate movement. And it's a culturally responsive service and program that provides training to our students to become a peer leader. In addition to this, I'll be sharing more about the work-based learning experiences and the different opportunities that we have to share with our students from that. And then our Crim 136T course is a new course that was offered through the AANAPISI initiative, which basically helps students become just providing them with that opportunity to practice their professional writing skills, since in the field of criminology, it has to do with a lot of writing, a lot of reports. So we want to make sure that our students are well prepared by taking this class.
As Sam mentioned, so in my particular role, one of my main and top priorities is guiding the EPIC peer mentors to form cohorts. So as I mentioned that we're just rolling into our year 2. And so for year 1, it was a lot about building the curriculum, building the community, and now we're executing. And so very exciting jumping into year 2 with our first cohort of peer mentors. And again, Sam did emphasize that EPIC stands for AAPI Criminology Peer Mentor, since we do have a specific niche focus on that. And so we're really excited starting year 2 with our first 3 peer mentors, and each peer mentor has about 10 mentees as of now. And because we work with such a niche community, we have approximately, I want to say like 100 students who identify as AANAPI and our criminology majoring students. And criminology again includes law enforcement, corrections, victimology, and then there's a separate major of forensic behavioral sciences that's also housed under the criminology department. So I also, aside from my peer mentors, I do a lot of the outreach to high schools, community colleges, and community events. I've attended a couple middle schools who have college preparation classes to kind of inspire them to think about higher education and take pathways that are unorthodox to what family has followed as well. Fresno State, around 70% of our student population are first generation students, and that's also what makes Fresno State unique to a lot of CSU campuses. And so we're really here to inspire the next generation to continue higher education. Sam and myself are also first generation students and are a product of Fresno State. And so we really understand making that connection with our students that we do have the opportunity of working with. I also implement a communication plan to reduce summer melt, which is basically the transition from spring back into the fall. So over the summer, we see a monumental amount of students like drop out or they just don't come back. And so my job is to connect with students to keep them rooted back into their courses, to check in with them, make sure that they're doing all right. If there's any particular resources that are offered on campus that I could also provide them. I also particularly work on introducing guide pathways and their personal scorecards, which is just keeping track of their goals and how they're able to navigate that, and holding them accountable to the goals that they set for themselves, as well as creating pathways for them to follow through those goals through timelines. And so, as I mentioned, my first and most important obligation is the peer mentors. And so through this program, the EPIC peer mentors will mentor peer students in criminology-focused academic planning. So in order to be a peer mentor, you have to be in your upper division. That way you're able to guide lower division students and even upper division students through their courses, through suggestions, and also to provide internal and external resources. So we coach our peer mentors very heavily on what resources are offered on campus. And as I mentioned, we've finally hired our first cohort of peer mentors, and it's really interesting to see these upper division students not really be familiar with the programs that are or the resources that are offered on campus. For example, Fresno State has the student food cupboard where students can get food for free. They have a clothing closet where they can get professional clothes for free. And our students who are in their final year are like, wow, I never knew about this, even though these resources have been offered for a few years now. And so being knowledgeable of those resources is crucial in our peer mentors. They also participate in various outreach activities and efforts. So when we do tabling, when there's big events on campus, like dog days or homecoming, we do our best to do outreach to those. We also focus on culturally competent activities such as the annual Lao Educational Conference, or ALEC, that's hosted by a local CBO called Lao American Community of Fresno, or LACF. And we are very intentional with the way we approach our culturally competent outreach skills as well. We also are very intentional with the way we want to maintain communication with our AANAPI-identifying criminology students. We've jumped through a lot of hoops, as I'm sure many people in the audience are aware. Like, there's so much paperwork for everything, right? But we really want to be intentional with how we approach that. So we have like our own Google group where we message students opportunities. We stay connected with AANAPISI hangouts, where that's a monthly lunch meet that we can connect with students on as well. And so those are a few of the things that I do in my particular role.
Awesome. So moving on to the work-based learning experiences, I think what's really great about this AANAPISI initiative is that Belle and myself are able to work very collaboratively. We support each other in our roles. So super grateful for that. But within my role as a work-based learning experiences project coordinator, I help students stay connected to career sites from entry to exit through career fairs, internships, site visits, guest speakers, or connecting to mentors. Which I'll go into more detail about as well. We work with Criminal Justice Leadership Council, comprised of esteemed agencies and organizations within the community, to create work-based learning experiences for students. So for our Leadership Council, we have prestigious individuals within our community of law enforcement agencies, corrections, as well as victim services organizations that we all kind of gathered that support our AANAPISI initiative. So we're consistently maintaining communication with them so that we're able to further provide these opportunities for our students. And they've been super supportive. We try to have our meetings once a semester. And so they've been super enthusiastic about supporting our students, providing opportunities to go tour their facilities, tour their offices, as well as, inviting them as guest speakers to speak with our students. And surprisingly, a lot of these organizations really want to recruit specifically Fresno State criminology students because it's a very well-known program throughout the nation. We have a lot of employers that are looking to outreach and recruit to our Fresno State criminology students, and of course, increase that diversity and that cultural representation of our AAPI students becoming professionals. In addition to this, we work with the University Career Development Center to support students to be better prepared for career entry. So we collaborate with them in regards to workshops. We're looking forward to collaborate with them and have more of a culturally responsive workshop that has to do with financial literacy, specifically for our AAPI students in criminology. So we're looking forward to more collaborations that we're able to have with them, and really being intentional with our collaborations with the Career Development Center. So our Career Development Center on campus helps them with resume preparation, cover letter preparation, as well as mock interviews. So we try to make sure that our students are well connected with the Career Development Center, because ultimately this is what will help them stay connected with those opportunities from freshman year all the way to when they graduate, and so on as well. So with our work-based learning experiences, our students will be able to receive supplemental experiences for career and academic development. They will be able to get connected to on-site work tours and professional shadowing opportunities. They'll be directly connected to criminology career fairs. They'll be able to attend career fairs and utilize the Fresno State Career Development Center resources. And they'll be able to experience a range of opportunities from site visits, guest speakers, mentorships within the Central Valley's leaders in the fields. So as you can see, I wanted to include a couple pictures from some of our events that we've been able to accomplish within our year one. So the first picture on the very left is our site visit that we were able to tour the facility of the Clovis Police Department. We had a great student turnout. Again, we only have about 100 AAPI students within the fields of criminology, so we were super excited to be able to see more of our students get connected and more involved with these opportunities that are provided to them. So like I mentioned, we visited the Clovis Police Department, and again, we wanted to make our collaboration efforts intentional. So we asked that the Clovis Police Department was able to provide AAPI representation of professionals within their department. So we were able to get connected with them. They were able to give us a tour of their entire department, from like their gym that they have with it for specifically their police department, all the way to their reports, their crime scene investigation reports, where they hold like like all of the things that they get from offenders. I'm for lack of a better word, I can't think of the word right now, but it's basically like if they get anything like in regards to like weapons that they retrieve from like the offenders and things like that, we're able to see where they hold that securely. We were able to see where their jail is within their department. So our students were able to see where they have, they keep offenders within the jail, like their jail cells, things like that, where they take their mug shots. And we were also able to tour their like where they keep their SWAT vans and where they keep their like bomb threat unit as well. So that was very interesting to be able to see that. And in addition to this work site visit, they also had a panel. So our panel was able to answer any questions, provide any tips or advice that they would want to share with our students, which was very nice to be able to have our students, ask questions and receive specific advice. So that was our Clovis Police Department site visit. And then the next two middle pictures was our first ever public defender site visit, which we had last spring. So our students were able to visit the public defender's office, get to meet some of the attorneys, and ask specific questions, as some of our students are also maybe interested in like law-related fields as well. So that was also a great turnout, and we had great student feedback as well. We try to be consistent with like our survey that we receive from our students so that we know that we're able to, which ways we're able to improve our site visits and what they really got out of our site visits as well. Some of our student testimonies from these site visits is that one student shared their tour was very informative. The chance to ask questions and get it all answered by various people from the department was awesome. Another student shared that they really enjoyed the tour and they look forward to future events. And then they provided more information on what are some future site visits they would like to attend, such as like victim services offices like that, or sheriff departments as well. So we try to, take our students' feedback and as we prepare for future site visits. And then the last picture, as you can see on the right, was our criminology career fair. This is an annual criminology career fair that we host at Fresno State. However, with the new initiative, we were able to take the lead on this event, and we had about 40 different organizations join our students. a couple of AAPI representations, so our students are able to, see an individual that looks like them in the field that they're wanting to pursue, to hopefully inspire them to pursue those professions within criminology. Like I mentioned, we had 40 organizations attend, from law enforcement offices all throughout the state, from San Jose in the Bay Area, all the way down to San Diego. So it was really great turnout to be able to see those organizations join us within Fresno State. And we had about 100 plus students for this event show up. And during this time, please keep in mind, in spring of last semester, it was still a hybrid campus for us. So we had a lot of students online and also in person. So we're looking forward to our next annual criminology career fair next spring, and really be intentional with having AAPI representation show up for our students as well. So yeah, that was a little bit of a summary of some of our work-based learning experiences that we have. And moving forward, we plan to have more guest speakers, more workshops, and more mentors for our students as well.
So I do want to take a quick pause and just invite you in the audience to ask any questions that you have in the chat. We do have a Q&A session at the end, and if you want to go ahead and have your question be top of the list, please feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat. We'd love to answer any questions you might have up to this point as well. I'm also going to drop our link tree in the chat if you would like to go ahead and check out all of our things. So you saw that we have our that Sam just hosted an amazing worksite visit. We got really great student testimonies from it as well, but you'll go ahead, you can see the pictures and our stories that are also provided on our link tree. This also has our digital brochure if you're interested in finding all the information we just provided in that digital brochure. And for any other questions that you may have, it also has the contact information as well. So again, thank you all for being here. And I kind of want to jump into the research of year one. And so it's really important to recognize the history of Fresno State's AANAPISI, AANAPI-identifying student populations. I do kind of want to emphasize as well. So you'll see that we use AAPI and ANAPI interchangeably, but it is important to recognize that AAPI and ANAPI are different in our approach. But I will go ahead and use ANAPI, and we will use them both interchangeably moving forward as well. And so what was initially included in the research was one of the research conducted by Dr. Takahashi and Alex Notbaum. Dr. Takahashi was our supervisor for year one. And so she was a really big movement maker in getting these AANAPISI grant for Fresno State. She particularly conducted research on the Hmong American student success at Fresno State. So half of Fresno State's Asian American population is Hmong identifying. And so they play a really big role in the AANAPI identifying student population at state. And through the research conducted, they found that Hmong students experience distinct academic challenges, including family responsibilities and learning English as a second language. Something I found particularly interesting with this is that students felt pressured by their families to basically either choose school, work, or family to provide for their families. So it wasn't very long-term thinking. It was very like short-term, we need you right now. So students, particularly male students, were found to be dropping out faster in order to just pursue work to support their families in that case. Most students are also less certain about academic readiness, progress, and success. As I mentioned, roughly 70% of Fresno State students identify as first generation. And so not being able to provide those guidelines, not being able to, that fear of asking questions in the fear of looking like you're less than or ready, or the imposter syndrome that comes with it, is also a big part of why the students feel less certain for academic readiness, progress, and success, just because not being able to do that outreach for the resource, not knowing how to guide yourself through that resource, or having people that are able to mentor you through that process is a big reason that most students kind of come in and out as well. And they also found that most students find campus connections challenging, such as assistance in major or connecting to professors. So something as simple as the requirement to go meet with advisors can be very challenging for our students. Again, particularly first generation students, because we're not sure how to approach it. When we see those emails, we think it's just junk emails, so we don't respond to it. And one of the biggest motivating factors, as someone who's worked in the advising office and observed the advisors, is that students wait until the last minute when they have to register for classes, and when the requirements is meeting with advisors, that's the time that they'll go ahead and reach out to the advisors. But it's not until the last minute when classes are already full and they're struggling to sign up for classes, they're struggling to make appointments with advisors, simple communication like that, it can be a very big obstacle for our students. They also face gender distinct challenges reflected on cultures. So for example, I mentioned earlier that that men will drop out faster because they feel the pressure to provide for their families, whereas women who want to pursue school, and more identifying myself, this is something I've gone through as well. I feel the need to be a perfect daughter who's able to be readily available for family while trying to balance school and work, and even my personal relationships outside of family. It's these distinct challenges that are culturally applied that we often forget the obstacles that come with them and are applied to students. So it's important to be culturally competent and understand that, you know, sometimes that student may not be submitting a paper because they had to babysit their younger siblings for the day. It's not even their own children, it's their younger siblings, but they inherit that responsibility being the older sibling within our culture as well. Or even when we have our funerals, they're 3 days long, and as a woman, as a Hmong identifying woman, I had to drop everything and show up to the funeral at 6 a.m. in the morning and stay until 8 p.m. at night to help clean up, serve the food, make the food. And so those are cultural competencies that are really important to understand when you're approaching your students who are first generation students and navigating both cultural worlds at the same time. And the last point is revealing differences in life experiences, such as reporting romantic relationships as a barrier to success. I remember when I read this research for the first time, that blew my mind, because I'm like, oh, it's not normal for me to feel pressured and see relationships as a barrier to my success. My parents have always told me too that, you know, don't date in college, because if you date in college, like you're just gonna get married, get pregnant, and then just drop out of school. And you know, I believe 1 out of 4 of students at Fresno State's campus are parents. And it's really important to acknowledge that and recognize the resources that need to be provided for that too. But particularly in the Hmong community, romantic relationships are seen as barriers. Parents will tell the kids, you know, don't get married, don't get pregnant, you know, finish your dreams first and then choose your career path. And so that's really important to recognize and understand how relationships are also interpreted culturally with Hmong students. And so I always like to highlight this particular resource because again, Hmong students make up half of the AANAPI population at Fresno State. And not to say that this experience goes across AANAPI populations, but again, when you working with a whole community, it's important to understand the obstacles that come with the students' experiences as well. And so this is research done prior to the grant, but within the year 1 grant, we also conducted a focus group and a needs assessment survey. And so I'll kind of go through the focus group first, so we can get a better feel of what we were anticipating for our students' representation. And so we conducted this focus group in early year 1 of our initiative. And when we were discussing with the students, we found that the AANAPI-identifying, particularly criminology students, felt underrepresented in their field of study. They even felt that they felt and kind of understood that criminology is a white dominated field. So a lot of times when they were in their class, they would be the only Asian identifying or AANAPI identifying student in the classroom. And so students share that, you know, maybe like I would prefer to stay quiet because I feel like my opinions and my perspective is different, which ties back to the initial research of why it's important to be culturally competent and understand different perspectives within the field. The students also share that they really would like the opportunity to participate in a peer or professional mentorship program, which is why this particular program was written into a grant, to provide that mentorship for students to feel guided and supported through this program as well. And again, this program is the first of its kind. It's a very niche community. So we work with it, and Sam will share a little bit more about statistics as well. But to be very intentional about how we're approaching this program and being culturally competent in our approach to achieving student success is a big crucial part of this particular grant. Students also expressed they would like to see more culturally catered events held on campus. And so this is aside from the criminology aspect of it. Of course, we always want to incorporate criminology into it, but also to see events of guest speakers that represent them. Sam has done a phenomenal job in coordinating that as well, like having guest speakers come join us, be intentional about worksite visit presenters and tour guides who look like them. And, you know, we don't really see that in their field. And this ties back to the initial and most important part, that they feel like crim is a white dominated field where they don't get to see that representation in or off campus as well. They also just expressed the general need for more student resources. And I mentioned this previously at the beginning that, you know, students, even our peer mentors, like they expressed like, oh, I didn't even know that student cover was readily available. And so not necessarily just that the resources need to be provided, but the resources need to be extended to their knowledge as well. So doing that intentional outreach of connecting our students to resources, being like, hey, if you didn't see this, there's an event going on today. They're giving out free breakfast burritos, or the clothing closet has moved to XYZ location. That way students are aware of the changes and have that network. And so by being intentional with our student listserv and providing that information to students who are not really connected to campus, it really brings the students back to campus and wanting to get more involved on campus and building those relationships, long-term relationships as a future alumna of Fresno State. And so I mentioned that we also had a need assessment survey too. And so this survey had 36 participants. And out of those 36, 38 believe that it's very important to have an AANAPI identifying criminal justice professional as a role model. That goes to say that, it's important to have that representation on campus. And that includes like guest speakers on campus. That includes representation in the community. Roughly 39% want to pursue a career as a forensic scientist. So this is really interesting because Fresno State's criminology major, law enforcement is the biggest proportion, but you'll see that through our statistics that we'll share later on, that a good portion of our students are either forensic behavioral sciences or victimology students. So law enforcement is not dominant in the AANAPI crim students. So it's more the victimology and forensic behavioral sciences. So they're interested in becoming people who are detectives, people who work with the FBI. Even some of our students have expressed that they want to be social workers, which is why they're taking victimology courses instead. So it's really interesting how, even though they are majoring in criminology, that their statistics don't necessarily match the law enforcement domination in criminology as well. They also reported, which I thought was very interesting and also really insightful to see too, that they wanted to major in crim through crime shows. Like that was one of the top statistics that, I wanted to do criminology because I watched Criminal Minds and I would love to fly on airplanes and do the detective work like that. So very interesting that, that they're so inspired by what's showed on media as well. Of course, they also said that they are very interested in helping others. So you'll see our AANAPI students, as I mentioned, are interested in forensic behavioral sciences and victimology and becoming social workers in the future, detectives who are able to look into the history of crimes as well and be able to understand the criminal mind through that too. Some of them also express, particularly I notice our law enforcement students are following in the footsteps of their family. And so they already have people in their family who are part of law enforcement, and they just feel like getting that education is an important part in being more successful in their career as well.
Awesome. So moving forward, I'll talk a little bit about the student demographics. Val did a really great job at sharing about our research that we've had since we've began within our year one. So as far as our student demographics, I'll try my best to break it down as easy as possible because I know it could be a little bit confusing. So beginning on the left-hand side, we have statistics about the breakdown of our AANAPI identifying students of what options that they're going into. Because again, I'd like to remind you that criminology is comprised of 3 different options: law enforcement, victimology, corrections, and then forensic behavioral sciences just recently became its own major. But it still falls within criminology. So as you can see here, we have about 52% of our AANAPI identifying students within crim law enforcement. We have about 14% of our AANAPI identifying crim students in victimology, and we have about 9% of our AANAPI identifying crim students within corrections. So we thought this was very interesting. And then we have about 23% of AANAPI identifying criminology students within our forensic behavioral sciences major. So as you can see, criminology law enforcement is one of our biggest options that our AANAPI identifying students are majoring in or taking the option in. So we thought that was very interesting to be able to break that down as of fall 2022. In addition to this, one of our biggest, I believe, most surprising data that we were able to draw was after breaking down our current AANAPI crim students, we're able to find that exactly 50% of our students' sex is female and 50% is male. So we thought that was very interesting, that we don't necessarily have to be very focused on the gender gaps within our criminology major. when we're outreaching and recruiting to our students, because we have a very similar interest of female and males interested in criminology. So on the left-hand side, it was our data was driven from Bulldog Connect, which is a platform that Fresno State uses to be able to keep track of student enrollments. So we're able to draw that from Bulldog Connect. And then on the right-hand side, we're able to draw our data from the OIE office, which is the Office of Institutional Effectiveness at Fresno State. And as Belle shared before, in order to be considered an AANAPISI, which is Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institution, you need your student population to be at least 10% of AANAPI-identifying students. However, Fresno State is a 12% AANAPISI serving institution. So breaking this down by numbers, because I know percentages could kind of, get you lost within just the overall percentage, but we broke it down as of fall 2022, there were about 2,870 AANAPI identifying students out of the entire Fresno State population of, well, on average, we have about 24,000 students on our campus. So if you take that, that's where we got our 12% of students. And then in addition to this, we wanted to break it down by criminology. Okay, so we know how many AANAPI identifying students are at Fresno State as a whole, which is 12%, but how about specifically criminology? So on average, we have about 100 AANAPI identifying students each academic year. So as of fall 2022, we had about 105 AANAPI identifying crim students, which is on average of our 1,800 students within our criminology major. So if you take those numbers and you break it down, we have about 6% of crim and AANAPI identifying students within criminology. And then, so breaking those two numbers down, we got a lot of questions. Okay, so there's 12% of AANAPI identifying students within Fresno State as a whole, but what's that percentage of AANAPI identifying students who are majoring in criminology? So breaking that down, that's where we're able to find our total percentage, which is 3%. So as of fall 2022, there are 105 AANAPI identifying criminology students out of the overall total 2,870 AANAPI identifying students. So we're able to break that down, and we're able to find that we have, of that 12% of our AANAPISI population at Fresno State, we have 3% who are actually majoring in criminology. So it is underrepresented of our AANAPI students choosing to major in criminology. And a lot of the feedback that we received from our students who are either changing their major or decided not to go with criminology is because one of the biggest misconceptions is that criminology is a dangerous field, or criminology is just a badge. It's just law enforcement. However, we want to be able to inspire our students that criminology is much more than a badge. However, a badge is really great being in law enforcement. As you can see, we do have a big proportion of our students who are majoring in criminology law enforcement, but we want to inspire them and also open up the opportunity that there's also other opportunities such as like victimology, studying victim services and things like that. So we try to be really intentional when we recruit and outreach to our students and try to inspire them to choose criminology as a future major to study in or a field to pursue their career in. So one of our internal goals within the AANAPISI initiative, our goal is to increase our AANAPI identifying crim students by 100%. I know this is a very optimistic goal, but if you really break it down by increasing it by 100%, what that means is we're going to take our 100, on average 100 students each academic year, and after the 5 years, we're hoping to increase that number to 200 students. And I know it's going to be very difficult for us to see the numbers right away, but I think as long as we're being more intentional with our outreach and recruitment to our high school students and inspiring them to major in criminology, I think we'll definitely be able to reach that goal and start to see that drastic change with this new resource for students and being the first AANAPISI program at Fresno State. So I hope that those statistics and the breakdown of the percentages didn't confuse you, but just to bring awareness of our percentage of our AANAPI identifying students within criminology.
Yes, and on top of that, I just kind of want to chime in. This is something I always like to share as well. So Sam did a really awesome job of breaking down. So like the AANAPISI population as state is Fresno State is 12%, but then out of the crim, so if the crim was 100%, only 6% of their students are AANAPI identifying. And so a big part of this grant as well is that that 6% is that 6% difference, that's almost double the difference. It's a huge difference and not representative of the student campus. In a perfect world, 12% of criminology students would be AANAPI identifying in reflection of this campus. And we've had questions like, oh, well, why does that 12% matter so much? It matters because it's not, criminology is supposed to be like a general application of ethnic diversity. So it's not like a culturally focused program like Asian American studies or Africana studies or Chicano Latin American studies. It's so of course, like an Asian American studies class, as an Asian American studies scholar myself, most of the class is Asian American studies, as you would suspect. But criminology, it's supposed to be a culturally diverse, it's a general program that doesn't really have a cultural emphasis. And so in order to be more representative, the criminology student population, at least 12 of them should be AANAPI identifying in a perfect world again, right? And I also would like to chime in on the pie chart that Sam provided. So I did earlier say that majority of our students are FBS or victimology students. So I failed to mention that that's a reflection of our incoming freshmen and sophomores. So now you'll see like the major changes beginning to shift. Most of our a good portion of our senior and junior students are law enforcement. So that is the majority as well, which you'll see reflected on the pie chart. But in the next couple of years, you'll see the shift to become FBS and victimology as reflected in our freshmen and sophomores as well. About 60% of our students, incoming freshmen, well, currently freshmen, so it's not incoming anymore. They're current freshmen and sophomores. 60% of our students are FBS or victimology majors. So you'll see that there's going to be a shift of percentages in the next couple of years, which is just an important note to take as well.
And just to add on to that, Belle, you reminded me that there's a big attraction to our crim law enforcement option because it's a very unique program. So it's Crim 108 program, which is basically a direct policing course. So our students have a 2-year internship specifically with the Fresno Sheriff's Department to already basically they're completing the police academy while still attending Fresno State. So they're kind of, for lack of a better statement, like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So there's a very big attraction to our crim law enforcement major. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Belle, that there's going to be a shift within the different options that our students are choosing as we increase that awareness. And also just a reminder that criminology is one of the biggest majors or departments on campus. So that should also be represented within our AANAPI identifying students as well, right? If it's one of the biggest majors, well, how come we're not having as big representation of AANAPI identifying students, which they kind of shift more towards like the health service fields as well. So we're trying to just, again, trying to increase that representation and that interest in the field of criminology.
And so with that, we'd like to present some of our student testimonies, just kind of sharing their experience as AANAPI identifying students in the crim field. Also, like in the midst of Stop Asian Hate being a criminology major as well, how has that affected their personal or educational experience? And so I'm going to go ahead and play this video. And again, if you have any questions, we'd like to invite you to drop them in the chat as well.
Just the way I grew up, my parents, they came here to America for my siblings and I to have like a better life, to be successful. So that's kind of driven me to find a career that I like, and then also to do something different from what my family normally does. Because there's that stereotype where most Asians or Asian Americans go into like nursing, they become doctors, or anything in the medical field. So to kind of branch out from that, I want to do something different, something interesting, so that's why I chose the criminology.
So being an Asian, it's really hard to venture out away from, especially my parents' expectations and a lot of people's expectations. So choosing something that I liked and that interested me was really hard. But that was like the main issue of trying to find or trying to go to college. Agency is a really strong topic, but I think one thing that it brought on was like it almost deterred me away from this study because I'm going for forensic behavioral science, so like with all the Asian hate and fear of me being targeted and all that stuff, it encouraged me because all this nasty stuff you see online and all the videos and all those news and it just brought me more to feel more connected. Like I want to do more for our Asian culture, for our Asian community. I want to push back towards the Asian hate, and instead of letting the hate win, I want to fight against it and win ourselves.
I feel like the first 2 years of being here at Fresno State and being in the criminal program, it wasn't that bad. It was actually really interesting, and I'm in my 4th year, and it still is interesting. But once you're in your junior and 4th year, then reality starts to hit where you want to start branching out. You want to start making connections in that. And for me, what's difficult is like personally for myself, I'm very shy, I'm very introverted. So right now, I'm trying to challenge and push myself to actually find the resources, make connections, and all, and kind of just put myself out there and prove that I'm fit for like law enforcement career.
One thing about this program is it gives you that connectivity to other people, and the support is there. We are always there to support you, but being involved and seeing that you're not alone, that all these oppression that you felt, all these things that you've seen, or your family and other people that have talked to you about it, you're not the only one that went through it. You're not the only one that heard it. You're not the only ones that these things have been said to. So being part of this program and being, like all these other programs that are a part of it, it helps you see that you can pursue what you like.
I'm really happy that I'm in the AANAPISI initiative now because then it's connecting me to more resources that's in connection with like law enforcement, criminology. We do worksite visits, which I find really helpful because then I can also build connections with those people at those worksite visits, and then maybe I can find some interest in there, and that can like lead to the start of my career in criminology. Don't be afraid to ask, and also like reach out to look for resources.
So something I also like to note from that video as well. Let me see if I can. Oh no. So something I like to note from that video as well is that so one of our students do identify as Hmong American in that particular video, and so I want to tie this back to the research that was done about Hmong students and how in the earlier in the video she shared that one of the toughest things about pursuing this is my parents' expectations, and how both of our students in this video said, right, like there's that stereotype being Asian American that they often expect us to just go into the medical field, and both of our students in the video are also first generation, and I've heard many students' testimonies, and being a Hmong identifying first gen student myself, I remember like my parents always wanted me to go to the medical field as well, because medical field is the easiest way to jump social classes instead of through personal interest. So a lot of our students feel the obligation to pursue the medical field, even if it's not what they desire. So that's what's really unique to our criminology students as well. If they're not necessarily following in their family's footsteps, that they're pursuing it due to personal interest and desire, which I think is very movement making amongst our students and takes a lot of bravery for our students to succeed. And so with that, oh no, what is? Oh goodness, let's figure this out briefly. Okay, there we go. Oh no, okay, it's okay, just a couple technical difficulties, nothing unique here going on here, right? And so with that being said, we hope that these shared experiences challenged our audience today to think critically about how ethnic identity and representation matters in any field of study, especially during movements of hate and violence. We shared a lot of data today about the work we do, but it's important to recognize that at the end of the day, students and people who face real life issues and students are people who face real life issues and struggles. And so with that, we'd like to challenge you to participate in our Jamboard and critically think of how ethnic identities and cultural awareness impact students' daily lives and why representation matters on and off campus. Sam dropped the Jamboard in the chat, so if you could please help us do that by opening it, I'll go ahead and share it on our screen as well. So we do have 2 different slides, and I'm just going to go do a brief walkthrough on how to do the Jamboard. So we do have 2 particular questions. You'll see at the top right here, it has 2 different questions. So the first question is, how does ethnic identities and cultural awareness impact our students' lives? And the second one is, how does representation matter on and off campus? So you can answer this from whichever perspective or role you are currently in. So whether that be a student, staff, faculty, just a community member, how do you feel like that internally matters in our students' lives? I do prefer to do this post-it note style. So you'll see on the left side over here, I'm not quite sure what it looks like on a phone, but if you are on a desktop, we do invite you to come join us. And then on this left side, you'll see this little square. It's a sticky note. So go ahead and press that, and you can go ahead and include whatever sticky note you want. So I'll do an example right here. You can change the color to how you please, save it, and it will pop up on this chat. So we'll go ahead and allocate about 10 minutes for y'all to go ahead and apply whichever answers that y'all would like to include within these slides. And if anybody is having issues with accessing, please let me know. And again, Sam did drop the Jamboard in the chat, so please feel free to open that.
Also, if you're having any difficulties with accessing the Jamboard, you're also more than welcome to drop your responses in the chat, and then we can copy them over to a sticky note.
If you're also more comfortable sharing your answer privately, you can also directly message Sam or myself, and we'll go ahead and include that for you. I'll go ahead and drop the questions in the chat as well, since I realize I cannot share both questions at the same time.
Okay, like Bob mentioned in the chat, we have time allocated until 2 p.m. So please feel free to take your time and to critically think about the proposed questions. We appreciate everyone's participation. And again, these sticky notes are pretty anonymous, so feel free to there's no wrong answer. Okay. So we have a couple more minutes. Again, as a friendly reminder, there's a second slide. So if you'd like to contribute, please feel free to do so. And then we'll just have a large group discussion in regards to these. And then any questions that you may have, and we'll be all finished. Okay, well, we have really great responses. Again, feel free to gather your thoughts in regards to these questions. We'll out of respect of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and just have a large group discussion and share some of these sticky notes that you all came up with. So on the first slide, again, the question was, how does ethnic identities and cultural awareness impact students' lives? So I'll go ahead and read them. So the first one says, the more cultural representation increases students' belonging on campus. And feel free to, use an emoji or drop a message in the chat if you agree with any of these, or if you have any other feedback or comment, feel free to unmute yourself as well. So yeah, the more culture, again, it was the more cultural representation increases students' belonging on campus. I think that's really huge. I completely agree with that as well. I'm not being biased because that was mine. So students feel validated and allows them to express their opinions comfortably. Yes. Yeah, it's nice to be able to validate students, expressions as well. So the next one is student group, study groups, interaction with professors, clubs, sports, the cafeteria even. Yes, that would be great. The next one says students will feel more seen and heard when we acknowledge their ethnic and cultural backgrounds. Yes, imagine being like one of the very few students, or in regards to like our students, imagine being the only like Asian student within a criminology class. So I think it's great when we acknowledge our students and, encourage them that, they're just one of the few that choose a career in criminology. So they should use that as like motivation or encouragement. The next one says our health and well-being, mental health, relationships, and self-value. Yes, thank you for that. And then ethnic identity shapes how people view individuals when they walk into a room. Both the person walking in and the people receiving the person need to understand that. In my role, I will try to help students develop. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, these are great post-it notes. I really kind of vibe with the one about the cafeteria. I think that's really important to recognize because amongst our AANAPI-identifying students, some of our South Asian students identify as Muslim. And so Fresno State recently had, well, not recently, it's been undergoing a while, but the pandemic makes it feel like it happened instantly. But Fresno State recently has a new student union called the Resnick Student Union, or RSU. And pre-pandemic, when the student union was just a proposal, we had students come into the ASI with Associated Student Incorporated, or like the student body of Fresno State, and kind of just petition and pitch the idea of having halal food presented at the cafeteria, at the food area in the new RSU. And so that's a really powerful thing, that you can even connect culture through food. And that's something that I feel like the CU system, we as a whole need to have more conversations about how to be culturally competent through food, because one of the best ways to bond with people is through food. So I think that's a really great point to be made. So thank you to everyone who contributed to this slide. And so on the question of why does representation matter on and off campus, I'll go ahead and run through these as well. So who we see becomes the possibilities of what people think they can become. It's inspiring when we see someone who we can identify with in the field we are wanting to pursue. And that's something students have said repeatedly, like I saw someone in my field and that inspired me to do it. And I want to take unique paths. So seeing people like that inspire me. Representation can help me feel less alone. Yes, I feel like that's something that we all resonate with. Representation shows BIPOC individuals and the majority racial group at my campus, whites, the possibilities for entering and thriving in certain fields. And as we did share during our focus group too, that a lot of students do feel like criminology is a white dominated field, and indubitably it is, like that's not something we can deny. And so by bringing those representation, we're trying to bring more cultural competence to this area as well. It's the essence of who we are, our identities, our career contributions in the world. It's everything, and it reinforces sense of belonging by connecting campus with city and community. These are really great insights, and I really appreciate that y'all really thought critically about why representation matters on and off campus. And I think this is something that's really applicable to how students feel represented too. And so with that, we wanted to, so we really appreciate everyone who participated in the Jamboard, but we'd also like to take this opportunity to kind of open the floor and invite you to kind of share your thoughts and perspectives, whether it be on the presentation or questions you may. So this isn't necessarily the Q&A part. We just kind of want y'all to share your thoughts vocally about how you feel about the questions that I proposed, and if there's more you would like to elaborate on. I know a lot of y'all share firsthand experience, so if you could share more, we'd love to invite you to the floor. So you can feel free to unmute yourself and address either questions as well.
In the chat, Lauren also shared that when you were sharing about, I believe, about the cafeteria part and the new RSU, she shared that, or they shared that Yes, and normalizes other types of diets. At the UK university I worked at, halal food was a norm. It was in the student store. That's awesome. Also, for those that don't know, I believe halal food is like Arabic food.
And I think halal it's a certain way of processing food, sort of, too. I don't know a whole lot. I didn't know about it actually until I went to that university to do some work. So I guess my one thought is that I don't know if your students talked about it this much, but during the whole George Floyd thing, two of the police officers were Asian identifying, or people identifying them as Asian. And that seemed to bring up some concerns, conflict, within the Asian American community broadly, dealing with, on one hand, violence from the COVID. On the other hand, there's been some historical rifts between Asian community and Black communities, like in Los Angeles particularly. And I was just wondering if that came up as issues in conversation or concerns with the students thinking of going into law enforcement.
Thank you. That's a really great question. So with the rise of Black Lives Matter, I think that's really important to recognize and connect with our communities. And the AANAPI community is notorious for anti-Blackness. And so that's really important to recognize. And I appreciate that you mentioned too the police officers that were a part of that. So one of the police officers was specifically Hmong identifying. So even though it happened in another state, it's something that really impacted the community here in Fresno. And with the political climate, people are on the extreme of one side or the other. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that we haven't had any students necessarily address the Black Lives Matter in the times we've had conversations with them. It was usually because Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate kind of rose at the same time. And so you would see a lot of conflict between the communities, and being part of those communities as well, and being an advocate for Black Lives Matter. In my personal experience, I do think it's really important to address that. And I really appreciate that you recognize and acknowledge that too. But as I had shared during my statistics as well, you are seeing a shift in our AANAPI students majoring in criminology to forensic behavioral sciences and victimology. And that does play alongside the cultural value of, criminology is a dangerous field. We don't want you going to law enforcement and corrections. But I'm sure that the Stop Asian Hate that has been experienced has also shifted the perspective of students as well. And during the social movement of Stop Asian Hate and Black Lives Matter, students are becoming more aware of how to approach their communities and culture. And as you saw in our student testimonies, our students are very passionate about pushing back on Asian hate and being able to serve their communities in more culturally competent ways. Because through this program too, we also focus heavily on, it's not only our communities that are struggling, and our students have echoed that as well. Like, we need to recognize that a lot of our communities are struggling, and the only way we can continue to go up, and the only way we can continue to excel is together. As Grace Lee Boggs says, the only way to survive is by supporting one another, vaguely quoted. But it's really important to recognize how our communities need to work in allyship in order to succeed.
Thanks.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that. So I guess we'll open this to the Q&A session as well. So I really appreciated that question, that addressing that issue on not only on campus, but like nationwide, that impacts our community too. If anybody would like to ask any questions, or have any reflection on our Jamboard, we are definitely open to that too. I will go ahead and share my screen on this again. Yeah, we'll leave this so this is during the Q&A session, but we'll also leave this slide up if you're interested in getting connected with us. Again, we have our link tree there as well. I'll drop it again in the chat. We would love to have y'all connect with us anyway, whether that be through our social media, emailing us. We're always looking to build more collaborations and support other programs throughout the campus, throughout the CSU system, UC system. We're always here to collaborate and support any way we can too. Sam, did you have any thoughts on that question? I realized I just completely took over. If you have any contributions you would like, or contributing thoughts you would like to share.
Oh, no, no worries. That was perfectly said. And again, I think it really highlighted like the student testimonial video as well. Okay. I know it's probably been a long day for most of you. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah, and this also doesn't have to be related to presentation. If you're interested more in the work that we do as individuals, or like more about us, we're happy to answer those questions as we go. Or if you're interested about like our student statistics, how we found them, any questions you have, we'd love to answer them. The best time to talk to us is right now, because we have floods of emails that we get every day.
Mhm. Lauren, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering for your research project. So are you both, sorry, I came in late as well. Are you both involved in the research piece too with this program, or only one of you involved in it?
So we do have like a program analyst that manages specifically like budget, or I know like our co-project directors typically look at the data as well. So I'm not sure, Belle could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if we actually have, well, we do have our external evaluator that also looks at statistics, but the statistics that we were able to draw from today's presentation, we kind of did our own internal like research on that, because we were very interested in looking at like you know, the percentages of students of crim and crim AANAPI-identifying students. And again, we got that question asked several times about like, okay, well, how many of that 12% are actually criminology majors, which now we're able to answer about 3%.
And to also address that question as well, regarding the research from year one. So obviously the one that was done was written into the grant. So that research was done like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's still very applicable to our students today. But regarding the focus group, I was a part of the team that conducted that. Sam was also in the loop of everything, all the research that was happening as well. And the needs assessment, we were a part of developing the questions and distributing the questions as well. So we are a part of the internal data alongside the statistics. But for example, like the research that was done before the grant, like that was out of our will, but once we've stepped into this role, we want to be very intentional with how we approached our student engagement and get a better understanding of students on campus as well. Yeah, thank you for that. We know like data is not always the funnest topic, but it's very important, especially when it comes to grant programs, right? Like being able to collect that and reflect it on the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I also wanted to share that we're only beginning year 2. So year 1 was very like behind the scenes work, you know, in preparation for the initiative. And then I would say we officially launched like this fall. So this is only the beginning. Year 2 started the beginning of October a couple weeks ago. So we're excited to be able to, you know, after reflecting on year 1, what more can we do for our students? So we're super excited for year 2 and where that will take us.
Thank you for sharing the presentation in the chat, by the way. Appreciate having a copy of that. And then I'll ask one more question, then I'll shut up. And my question is, does Fresno State disaggregate its data about Asian Pacific Islander Native American students as an institution, or are Asian Americans and API that carry lumped together, and the Native American students Indigenous and a different? Or do they actually separate out the Hmong, or did you all have to do that yourself?
So Fresno State, from our knowledge and experience, does not disaggregate the data. So everything's just lumped in as Asian, but it does separate Asian American and Pacific Islanders. So you'll see like our PI population in criminology is like 2 students compared to the AAPI. So we try to be very intentional with separating the data as well, but we do have to look internally about like their ethnicity. And that's not something that students record. They only mark, oh, I'm Asian, but not broken down into that as well. And it also doesn't break it down like students who are mixed. And so that's something that we're really trying to be intentional with approaching in year 2, is that mixed students put 2 or more identities. So you have to really meet the students and break it down in order to understand that. But so to answer the question shortly, no, it is not disaggregate. In the sense that it breaks down like Asian categories, like you won't be able to find that. Yeah, and that's something that well, that hopefully the system has said that they are trying to work through that with our OIE, which is just like the university data. They're trying to break that down and find ways, but I'm not sure if it's going to be something that happens anytime soon. But that is something that's very important information, and we are very interested in getting to know our students one-on-one to provide that as well. Yeah, and we love the questions. We really appreciate you taking time to ask them. Since it is towards the end, we will go ahead and just thank you all for your time, for being here, staying for the entirety of it. And we do have a slide up, so please feel free to connect with us. We'd love to connect. And we want to thank Candace for dropping our slides in the chat. Our contact information is also at the end of the slide. So if you ever have any questions or are interested in finding ways to collaborate in the future, we'd love to find ways to stay connected with all of y'all in the audience, whether you be students, staff, faculty, community members, always looking a way to expand our program in the communities we serve as well. So with that, we'd like to say thank you very much for joining us today. Sam, if there's any final words you would like to close us with.
Thank you all for all of your questions and staying with us throughout this presentation. We hope that this hopefully inspires you where you're at in your different campuses to hopefully have an AANAPISI program in your campuses as well. Thank you, everyone.